Welcome to the final section of Chapter 8. We're closing out our look at computer vision with a focus on privacy and responsibility. Earlier in the chapter, we saw how machines turn images into mathematical predictions, and we learned how systemic bias can warp those results. Now we have to ask a deeply human question. What happens when your physical face becomes searchable data? To answer that, we'll follow a clear path. We'll define what biometric data actually is, examine public surveillance and consent, sort through the patchwork of legal regulations, outline responsible use, and finally wrap up the chapter. Let's start with subsection 5.1, Your Face is Data. This diagram illustrates 4 forms of biometric data: a face, a fingerprint, a voice wave, and an iris. Biometric data refers to measurements of the body used to identify a specific person. Unlike a username you pick out, these are biological facts tied permanently to who you physically are. Because you don't choose your biology, this data is incredibly convenient for unlocking your devices. But that exact same trait makes it uniquely devastating if the data is collected, stored, or leaked without your permission. Let's go behind the algorithm to see why privacy experts treat biometrics with extra caution. Look at this split screen. On the left is a traditional text password. On the right is a 3D faceprint mesh. If a database is hacked, you can easily reset a password. It's a temporary secret. A faceprint, however, cannot be reset. You carry it everywhere, it stays mostly the same for years, and it can be captured from across a room without your cooperation. Large facial recognition systems require massive amounts of data to search against. Companies like Clearview AI bypassed asking for permission entirely. They built these searchable databases by scraping billions of images directly from public websites and social media platforms. Let's take a privacy pause here. Think about your own digital footprint. Were your online photos knowingly volunteered to a surveillance system, or could they have been quietly scraped from the open web? Being publicly visible online does not mean a person agrees to become a searchable faceprint. Unless strict rules enforce our right to say no, we often have to assume our faces are already collected in these systems. That brings us to subsection 5.2, Surveillance and Consent. The riskiest use of facial recognition is one-to-many identification in real time. Look at the street scene. The cameras are actively mapping digital tracking squares onto pedestrians as they walk through public space. When you set up Face Unlock on a phone, that is opt-in consent. You actively agree to it. But public biometric surveillance operates on an opt-out model. In a busy city, there is rarely a practical way to opt out of walking past a camera. These systems are frequently deployed in retail stores, transit hubs, and massive environments like this stadium. At this scale, cameras turn ordinary citizens into continuous database queries, checking thousands of faces against a watch list simultaneously. The real-world impact extends well beyond false matches. Researchers observe a chilling effect. When people know they are being constantly identified, they alter their lawful behavior. They might avoid a peaceful protest, skip a sensitive medical appointment, or steer clear of certain neighborhoods. Continuous surveillance creates a quiet, invisible pressure that narrows the scope of everyday freedom for everyone. Let's move to subsection 5.3, the rules, bans, and regulation. Facial recognition technology deployed much faster than the law. Today, there is no single answer to whether this technology is legal.
It depends entirely on who is scanning you, what they are scanning for, and where you happen to be standing. The most important distinction is who operates the system. Police use of facial recognition raises immediate civil rights and constitutional issues. Commercial use by a retail store or a social platform falls under consumer privacy laws. This table breaks down the regulatory snapshot as of mid-2026. Notice the top row. There is no broad U.S. federal law governing police use. Oversight is left mostly to individual states and over a dozen cities that have passed full bans on government deployment. At the state level, the Illinois State Capitol passed a remarkably strict biometric privacy law covering commercial use. This law demands that companies secure explicit consent, and it has forced massive financial settlements from major social media platforms. Other regions take a different approach. The European Union's AI Act broadly prohibits police from using real-time, remote facial identification in public spaces, allowing only a few very narrow exceptions. Because this landscape shifts constantly, trying to memorize a single rule is impossible.
Citizens simply have to check which specific, fragmented rulebook governs the physical space they are in. This brings us to subsection 5.4, using computer vision responsibly. Computer vision is not inherently malicious. It helps blind users navigate the world and sorts our photo albums, and as we see here, assists doctors in reviewing complex medical diagnoses. Its safety depends entirely on using the right tool in the right place with the right safeguards. The most vital of those safeguards is keeping a human in the loop. A computer vision match must always be treated as a lead for a person to verify. It should never be treated as absolute proof. To evaluate any claim about AI that sees, you can use this 6-question checklist. It asks you to clarify if the system is just detecting a face or actively identifying a person. It asks whether the search is a one-to-one match or a high-risk one-to-many scan against strangers. And it demands clarity on consent, the cost of a false match, human review, and bias testing. You can try this out yourself. Take a real-world proposal, like putting facial recognition cameras in train stations, and ask an AI chatbot to give you the 3 strongest arguments for and against it. Then, use the 6-question checklist to pressure test the underlying facts. Responsible use means treating the computer's output as one piece of evidence that a person must then evaluate and act upon. Finally, we arrive at subsection 5.5, chapter wrap-up. We started this chapter by looking at how a machine turns raw pixels into numerical arrays, and we followed that thread all the way to the complex biometric systems now used to identify people in public spaces. Here are the 4 durable takeaways to remember. First, recognizing an image is not the same as understanding it. Second, a match is a probability, not a verdict. Third, average accuracy easily hides deep unfairness. And fourth, consent and human review are not optional extras. These principles apply whether you are tracking the EU AI Act, setting up opt-in consent, or demanding a human in the loop. The technical ability to identify someone must always be balanced against the necessity of doing so. Informed questioning remains the most effective tool for navigating a world filled with computer vision. Carry this habit into our next chapter, where we'll look at what happens when machines don't just see the world, but begin to physically move and act within it. We will see you there in the next chapter.